Welcome everybody. We're very excited to have you join us tonight for this is a special edition of the Community Talk series. My name is Debbie Reinhardtson and I'm with the Carolina Institute for Developmental Disabilities. And we usually have the Community Talk series on the second Wednesday of each month. But one of our participants asked if we were doing anything on intellectual disability and voting, and we did not have that on our docket. So Holly graciously agreed to talk about that topic tonight on short notice. Let me do just a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce Holly. And if you could, it would be helpful if you could turn off your video and mute yourselves just so that we won't have any distractions in the background. And for those of you who are looking for certificates, at the very end, I will be putting the URL in the chat box. And if you could just click on that URL, it will take you to a very quick evaluation, which will then provide you with the certificate. Also, what we plan to do in terms of questions is let Holly go through her presentation. And then if you do have questions, put them in the chat box and Holly will be happy to talk about those at the very end. So let me introduce Holly. Holly Watkins works at the ARC of North Carolina as the Business Development and Public Relations Manager. She spends most of her time advocating for people with IDD, overseeing media communications and helping to organize events. When she's not at work, she enjoys being outside and volunteering with community organizations such as Activate Good and the Carolina Tiger Rescue. So welcome, Holly. We're really glad that you agreed to join us on such short notice.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody that's attending this evening. I think this is an excellent topic. As I said, I've got a lot of really important information that I want to share with you guys. So let's jump in and let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the ARC, who we are, who we serve, what we do. So the ARC of North Carolina is part of a national organization. We have been in existence for over 65 years. And we are a private, nonprofit organization. So nationally, the ARC of the United States is the largest community-based organization, and they are committed to improving the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities through advocacy, through service, public policy, and information. We encompass all ages and all spectrums. We work with individuals who have been diagnosed with autism, Down syndrome, Fragile X, and other various developmental disabilities. We are a membership organization. Many decisions are made by our membership at the state. Okay, it looks like I was muted and now I'm unmuted. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Next slide, please. There we go. Thanks, Debbie. So here's what we're going to talk about this evening. As I said, it's a lot of information. Mail-in voting versus poll. Going to the polling site to vote, how that's going to work during COVID-19, access to voting for a person with IDD, voting rights and advocacy, explaining the voting process and rights to guardians, and then a person's intellectual ability to understand and make their own choices. Next slide, please. So this is really important, and I want everybody to understand that your vote matters. Political elections are an important part of our lives. people elected to political office get to make all kinds of decisions, and many of those decisions are going to affect your life and the lives of your family, most likely. Sometimes it can be really easy to say, you know what, I'm just one person. What does my vote matter? Many elections, it's important to note that many elections have been decided by just a few hundred votes. So, you know, if you can get out and if you can get out to a polling site and vote, if you are able to use a mail-in ballot to vote, it's really important. It's really important to exercise that right. I also want to make sure that if you have not registered to vote, make sure you register to vote. Go ahead and do it as soon as possible. The deadline to register to vote in the upcoming November 2020 election, the deadline to register is Friday, October 9th. So make sure you register as soon as you can if you are able to do so and you have not done so already. We've got some information for an absentee ballot request, and I can make sure we get that to you later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about access to voting for people with IDD. So there are a lot of laws and rules in place to make sure that voting is accessible to people with disabilities. There must be a poll worker available to assist you. If you choose to vote in person, ask one of the people at the polling site who would be available to assist you if you need help. This is more about just physical assistance. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with competency. We'll talk a little bit about that later. There are different ways that you can vote. During this time of COVID-19 and the pandemic, obviously it's made our lives very different in what we do. And so many people might not feel comfortable going to vote in person, which is understandable. There are several different ways for you to vote in the upcoming election. You can vote, as I said, by mail-in ballot. You can also vote from a facility. A facility would be a hospital, a nursing home, or a group home, or you can actually go vote in person. Next slide, please. Okay, so voting by mail or in person. If you vote by mail, you're going to need to obtain an absentee ballot. And you may ask, what's an absentee ballot? An absentee ballot is a form that you will fill out that will allow you to cast your vote from home, since you will not be going to vote in person. You can call the North Carolina Board of Elections or your local county Board of Elections to request a form. Let me take a step back. When you request an absentee ballot, you're going to have to fill out a form. You may be able to fill it out online, but many people will go ahead and actually print the form out and fill it out by hand, and you have to sign it. It doesn't take very long. I actually did it myself. It takes maybe 5 minutes. You fill out that form and you have to mail it in to the Board of Elections. And once the Board of Elections gets that form, they will hopefully approve it. They would approve it and they would say, okay, we're going to go ahead and send this person an absentee ballot. And that ballot, when you receive it at home, is what you would fill out to vote in the election. If you go to vote in person, you may be able to do curbside voting. Many voting sites now, many polling sites have curbside voting, which is really nice because you don't even have to leave your car. The poll workers will bring the necessary information and the ballot to your car. You can vote and you can turn it back in and you're done. It's actually a really convenient process. You can also go inside the polling site and vote in person. there is usually, when you walk in, there is a main desk that you will go to, and you have to check in with the poll workers. There's information that they need to confirm. They need to make sure you are, they'll ask you for your name and your mailing address, and you will give them that information. They will check you off as someone who has come in to vote, and they will then hand you a ballot, and then you will be directed to a voting booth where you will go and actually fill out that ballot. And once you've done that, you can take your ballot to the voting machine and insert the ballot, and you voted. I want to talk a little bit about early voting. Early voting is going to begin on October 15th. And what early voting is, this means that you can go to a polling site in person to vote before Election Day. And Election Day this year is November the 3rd. And so you can actually go before a lot of people choose to vote early just because they don't want to have to go on one day to try and vote. Maybe there's other things going on. It's just not convenient for them to go on November 3rd. Early voting gives them the option to go out and vote ahead of time. It may also be a little bit less crowded if you go in person and you go vote early. The important thing with early voting sites, they're going to be set up across North Carolina, but you want to contact your local Board of Elections to find out where those early voting sites are going to be located. So make sure you do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about voting rights and advocacy. If you are a person with an intellectual and developmental disability living in North Carolina, you have the right to vote privately and independently. That means that you do not have to have someone with you while you vote, and no one can tell you who you should or should not vote for in an election. It's your choice. Each polling place should be accessible and have voting booths that are accessible. This means that someone who uses a wheelchair should be able to enter the building where voting is taking place, and there is a voting booth available for them to use. You have the right to have someone with you when you vote. And you can also bring a service animal if you choose to bring a service animal. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about some of these later. If you feel that your rights are being violated, you can contact the North Carolina State Board of Elections or Disability Rights North Carolina. If you're not familiar with Disability Rights North Carolina, they are a fantastic organization that works with individuals with IDD as well as individuals with other disabilities, and helps protect their rights and ensure that they are getting the rights that they deserve. They do fantastic work, and if you don't know much about them, take some time and learn about them, because they may be really helpful to you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the voting process. You have rights that you keep when you have a guardian, if you need one. A few of those rights include the right to vote, the right to marry, the right to make a will, and the right to enter into a valid contract. There are laws in place, and again, I'll get to this a little bit later on, but there are laws in place in North Carolina that protect you and protect your rights. And there's specific statutes that are designated for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to make sure that their rights are noted so that they can be protected. Only a judge can decide if a person can't vote, usually because of a crime, not because of a disability. A poll worker, a service provider, or a family member doesn't have the ability to decide whether or not you can vote. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. So intellectual ability and understanding so that you can make your own choices. People with IDD are allowed to have a person of their choosing help them vote if they would like. This is really important. If you are living in a group home staff cannot vote for you. They cannot go out and take your place and vote for you. Who can help a person vote if they have IDD and a guardian? Whoever you want. One person only though, unless it requires more to physically access a voting booth. So let me back up. When you go to a polling site, if you're wondering who can help a person vote if they have IDD and a guardian, again, whomever they want. Voting is a right that they retain along with the other rights that I just mentioned, and also all of the rights that are included in the statute that I'm going to talk about a little later. Let's talk a little bit about a congregate setting. Many of you may not be familiar with a congregate setting. Maybe you've heard the term, but you're just not sure what that is. A congregate setting would be any staffed setting. So that could be a nursing home, alternative family living, could be a group home. I talked a little bit about those statutes. So Chapter 35A, and again, if you want the full statute, I'm happy to locate that for you and get that to you at a later time. But Chapter 35A is a North Carolina statute that gives details on guardianship and who can and cannot help a person vote. All right, next slide, please. So what happens if you go out to vote and you are denied the right to vote on election day by a poll worker? There are some things that you can do. One of the things that you should do if you're turned away, you can look at the poll workers and say, the law requires that you give me a provisional ballot with a receipt. And if the poll worker still says, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think you should be here to vote. Or if somebody else around that polling station says, no, I don't think you should be here. I work at this poll. I don't want you here. I don't think you should be voting. Then you need to step away, and you should either contact Disability Rights North Carolina, let them know that, hey, I'm trying to vote. My rights are being violated. I need some help. You can also call the State Board of Elections or your local county Board of Elections and speak with them and let them know what's happened. Let them know the polling site where you are. If you get names of people that told you you can't vote, make sure you have that documented. But you want to make sure that you are able to exercise your right. So there are things that you can do. All right, next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about voting, we've talked about the process, but what should you do before you vote, and what should you do after you vote? Take some time before the election and educate yourself. Learn a little bit more about the candidates running for each office. There are some big elections coming up in November. We're going to vote for the President of the United States. We're going to vote for the Governor of North Carolina. We're going to vote for United States Senators. We're going to vote for United States House of Representatives. We're also going to be voting at the state level to fill positions in the House and in the Senate for the North Carolina General Assembly. So it's important to ask yourself a few questions. Do their views and values align with your views and values? What are they doing to help people with IDD? What are their issues? What's important to them? Are those issues important to you too? You want to make sure that you visit the candidate's webpage. And these days, candidates also have social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go to any page you can find and learn more about that candidate. Learn more about who they are and what they stand for to help you better decide who you want to vote for in the election. So after the election, you're going to want to stay up to date on the issues that are affecting people with IDD. You can go to the ARC of the United States and learn what elected officials are doing for people with IDD. The ARC of the United States does a great job in keeping up with what's going on in Washington, D.C., and what senators and congresspeople are doing to help people with IDD. They're always posting about issues that are coming up to discuss. So, you know, it's a great way to stay up to date on the work that they're doing. You can also learn more about how you can become a self-advocate. This is something that's really important. Maybe there's an issue that one of our North Carolina senators is working on, and you want to learn more about it, or you're not happy with what they're doing. You know, we can teach you how to contact that representative and speak with their staff and talk with them about the issue and why you like it or why you don't like it. So there are a lot of great resources, and becoming a self-advocate is something that's really, really powerful. Next slide, please. So I've thrown out a lot of information and a lot of resources. So I wanted to put a few up on the slide. As I said, the ARC of the United States is a fantastic resource and has a lot of great information. They've put together a disability voter guide that's really comprehensive. They have a version in English and in Spanish. I would certainly take some time and look at that voter guide to help you understand the process and understand what you need to have in place when you vote. Again, I want to put in a plug for Disability Rights North Carolina. They have created a project called Access the Vote, which has great information and resources on local races, local elections, as well as state elections, what you need to have in place, and you know, what to do if you think your voting rights are being violated. So that's a great resource to check out. Also, the North Carolina State Board of Elections, you're going to want to look at their website just to make sure that you've got everything in order. And if you've got questions, you can call the State Board of Elections and they will help answer your questions. Next slide. So that's it. I am happy to take questions. I will say, if I don't know the answer to a question, I would encourage you please to send me an email. My email address is listed there. And I will be more than happy to get an answer for you. We've got a huge staff at the ARC of North Carolina, a lot of experience and a lot of resources. So I am sure that I can help you out. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Holly. I really appreciate your time and all the great information. We did have one question in the chat. Do we need identification for presidential election?
It's my understanding that this year you do not need ID identification if you go to vote in person. Let me just confirm that quickly. But go ahead if there are other questions.
Yes, and if anybody, we have a small group, so if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's perfectly fine.
Hi there. Oops. Go ahead.
Did somebody have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, sorry, I heard somebody talking at the same time. Hi, my name is Natalie. I am representing Moji Coffee. There's actually quite a bit of us here. We are putting together a voter event in coalition with RevUp on November 22nd. And so we're preparing to just sort of answer a lot of questions. And one of the things that you said that struck me, as far as like if there is a concern and where to report it, what about if, like as an advocate or if anything is reported our way, or we happen to hear of an issue or someone, just by comfortability reports an issue to us, would we refer that person to report it directly, or is there, are we allowed to be like a third party reporting or anything like, as individuals or as any organizations?
That's a great question. I know that most organizations would prefer to have that person contact them directly and reach out to them if there's an issue. Certainly, feel free to contact, as I said, if Disability Rights North Carolina is always a great first contact. So I would reach out to them, talk to them about the situation and let them guide you, let them tell you what, the best course of action might be. It might be that they can talk with you and help that person through you, or it might be that they say, hey, we really encourage this person to call us and file some sort of a report with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a comment, Holly, was from one of the participants at the polling place. There are volunteers called voter protectors that will help out folks that have any problem voting.
Yes.
Hi, this is Kathy Honeyman. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. I was absolutely thrilled when you folks decided, to go ahead with this. I work with, I am in mental health, and I work with a lot of persons with IDD, adults with IDD, and most of them are not registered. Most, of course, most don't vote. And I also find that it's not encouraged, or it's not talked about, or even parents don't even think of these folks as voting. And so what I really do with them is, we talk about, well, where do you think the idea came from? Where do you think this came? It all came because people voted for people who put forth those programs that help all of us and help the disability community. And you owe it to yourself to vote. And so while I don't tell them who to vote for, certainly can't do that, but I really encourage them to vote. And I encourage parents to have their adult children taking part in this. I don't know if you have any kind of statistics, with regard to the disability community voting. I mean, 80% of persons with disabilities have mild IDD. So, you know, I just, I don't know. I don't know if there's been any kind of effort out there, especially by the ARC, you know, to not just educate people about voting, but to educate the whole community that this is a voting block that is not a block because they don't vote. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you for your 2 cents. I appreciate that. And I think that, you know, you're right. I think that I don't have any statistics off the top of my head, but I know that, you know, many people with IDD aren't aware that they can vote. Their families may not be aware that they can vote. So, you know, for our part, we do put out information about voting, why it's important to vote. Our chapters, I know our chapters may be working at the local level to help educate the individuals that they're working with. I know that our resource advocates at the state level, you know, they're talking to the families, you know, pointing them to resources and information that they can use, you know, to help them vote if they choose to vote.
You know, and one more 2 cents bit. You know, this is actually a wonderful story for the News and Observer.
Mm.
It really is about what about adults with disabilities? Where are they? You know, and in the voting polls, do people know that they have the right to vote? A lot of parents don't know they have the right to vote. A lot of parents don't know they have the right to marry. You know, so yeah, so I would love to. I think that this is a story for the News and Observer. I really do. I think I might even get a hold of them, and maybe I could even tell them that I heard this wonderful presentation. I mean, you gave a terrific presentation, Holly, and very, very informative. You know, so that could get, who knows who could read just a little article like that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do that, Holly.
Oh, of course. It's, you know, I love talking to the News and Observer, and of course I welcome, you know, talking to anyone from the media. So, you know, my contact information is there on the slide. Feel free to pass that along, and I'd be happy to talk with a reporter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hey, Holly.
Yes.
This is Tim Flavin. I'm also with Moji Coffee and More. And just to echo what Kathy said, I also coach Special Olympics, and it's amazing how many of the guardians and parents don't know that their children have the right to vote. One thing that I think would be very, very helpful to us if somebody could try to get us a statistic, because we, as Natalie said earlier, we're going to run a program on September 22nd, National Registration Day, and it's going to be an education and registration program. So people are going to come in and hear a presentation very similar to what you just went through, telling them you do indeed have the right to vote, and hopefully get to the point where we're saying you have an obligation to vote, you know, and we will register them there. We'll get absentee ballots there. So, and again, we're going to be doing it in Winston-Salem, and we know already that we're going to get pretty good news coverage both beforehand and that day. And I just think I don't think anybody understands what Kathy said, that people don't know they have the right to vote. But I would like to try to quantify it. You know, we know, 8 out of 10 people are either unemployed or underemployed. I'd like to know that number for the number of people that do not vote, that are eligible to register and vote.
Yeah.
And
There-
Holly, This is Haley, also from the Winston crew. I just dropped in some statistics that we came across in our research from the American Association of People with Disabilities through the Rev Up campaign. And yes, staggering numbers. I put them in there just so you can see, all the details of it. But in 2016, 16 million people with disabilities voted, and there's an estimated I've also seen 31 million float around of people with disabilities who are eligible to vote if they were registered. So we certainly have lots of work to do, but this is a fantastic presentation. And I think anything we do to get the conversation started is going to be huge for this election.
Thank you. And Moji, we were going to work with you guys on our conference.
With what?
I think Moji was going to work with, we were going to work with you guys on our 2020 Rooted in Advocacy conference.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be wonderful.
Yep.
And the other thing too that wasn't mentioned is that this event that we're talking about, we're Moji Coffee, but we are working with Stephanie from the ARC of High Point. So to speak to what is the ARC doing, that is a region, a local chapter, and we are joining forces to serve the triad to the best of our ability. So we'll be posting about it and sharing a little social media feed just to continue to share this information as much as possible before the kind of upcoming weeks and the dates get crucial.
If you guys wouldn't mind, Natalie or Tim, if you guys wouldn't mind just sending me just a quick blurb about the event on the 22nd so that I can help promote that through the ARC of North Carolina social media. That would be great. And I actually was going to connect you or make sure you were connected with Stephanie at the ARC of High Point. So I'm glad that you are.
Yes, we are. Yeah, she's an active participant in our planning of this session, and we were just able to find a location to have. It's actually an outdoor shelter, but it's a shelter, so if it rains or anything, we'll be fine. But it's classified outdoor, so we can have a few more people there. So we're really thrilled about both those aspects of it.
That's wonderful.
Because we think, what you were doing now with the webinar and stuff is good, but I just don't think it's as effective as, being face to face if people are willing to come out to it,
Right. Well, that's what it's about. I mean, grassroots advocacy, getting out there and being on the ground and talking with folks. So thank you for doing that event. That's really important work.
You should come visit us on the 22nd.
Oh, I may do that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Holly. This is Pam Crawford. I'm a new resource advocate at the ARC in Charlotte. And I started on the 10th, and I wanted to sit in on this because I also have a son that has disability. My question is there any colorful flyer with this, a little bit of this information, just a lot of visuals with dates for us to pass out to our families? Because I'm not sure if I hadn't reached everybody that I'm actually supporting, but I'm not sure if they have this information. They may have it. I don't know. I haven't been there long enough to know, but it's definitely something new to me. I didn't think my son would be able to vote. He voted all his life, but he had a car accident about 4 years ago, which left him with a brain injury. And so I'm thinking, I even put the question up, if he was deemed incompetent, would he still be able to go vote? Because I definitely want to get him to the poll.
So, I was sharing before the call with Debbie that I actually looked for some sort of infographic that had a lot of this information on it, as well as what happens when you go to an actual polling site. And nobody really has that. So, I can talk with our team and see if developing some sort of flyer or infographic just based on some of the information that I've got here in this presentation seeing if we can create something for our families and also something we can share.
And soon, because if the deadline to register is, within a week or so.
Yeah, so the deadline to register to vote is October the 9th.
Yeah, so we don't
Yeah.
have much time. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
Holly, this is Cheryl. I'm a parent on here, and I'm strongly encouraging and supporting both my children, one on the spectrum and the other not, to make sure that they vote, young adults. And I mentioned to Debbie when I saw this that I felt like this was a godsend, because just the week before I was getting ready to go online to search to see who had anything, and I was even going to contact North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities to see if they knew of anything that was out there. And so I greatly appreciate this. And I agree with Pam, like, I think an infographic, because that was what I originally thought of, would really help, to reach people across the spectrum that may have just a slightly different abilities to see and get the information. But I just wanted to put that in to say thank you for doing this. And I shared it via email and on Facebook to, so that people could share it with their friends and family, because I really thought this was important, and it's helpful. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, that's my mom.
Oh, go ahead. Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, that was my mom you just heard.
I wanted to, I'm sorry, Sean, did you say you did want to share something or no?
Well, no, I just told you that you just heard my mom.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wanted to share with folks too that we have had some interest for this webinar from the Hispanic community. So Holly has graciously offered to share the webinar with them, and some of their folks are going to translate it so that other people will have access to it. We didn't have time to do a live caption tonight or to have an interpreter tonight, but that will be available in the community hopefully soon. Any other questions?
Well, I like just one thing. I would like to have, the address of the emoji event, or is it emoji event or moji event?
Are there still emoji folks on?
Yeah,
Willing to share?
there you go. Hey, Natalie.
If you wouldn't mind, like, putting it up on the chat so I can at least get the address, where to go, what time it's going to be. I'm in Raleigh, so I would love to have something here in Raleigh.
I think
I'm sorry.
Natalie's putting it in there now. And yes, so I think it would be great. We could hopefully share too Natalie's email address or something of that nature. We would like to do, we're working on starting a Rev Up as part of the American Association of People with Disabilities umbrella here in the Triad, a Rev Up organization that would meet yearly, so quarterly or whatever we decide. But in starting that in the Triad, there's nothing at the state level, so it would be amazing to have some Raleigh folks so we can share what we're doing here, because of course we would love for it to be able to spread across the state and not only make an impact this election, but even a bigger impact in the elections to come. So that would be fantastic to be able to have some contacts there as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah.
And somebody asked about sharing the PowerPoint, and Holly, is it okay with you? I think you said that that was fine earlier. Just want to double check to send it out to folks.
Yeah, I think I sent the PDF version
You
of
did.
the
Yep.
PowerPoint to you.
Yep.
So if you want to share the PDF, again, if people have questions, my email is there, so you can feel free to send me a question.
We'll do that after this is over. And I am going to put in the chat here, make sure this connects. There is a link to a brief evaluation. If you all wouldn't mind, please fill out the evaluation. We take our feedback seriously, and you just click on this link and it should take you to the evaluation, which is very short. There is a password, which will be the password for all evaluations this semester, CTS 2020, which is Community Talk Series 2020. For those of you who want certificates of completion, once you complete the evaluation, you will be linked to your certificate of completion.
Mhm.
Cool.
Again, Holly, thank you so very much for such an informative session. It really sparked a lot of nice conversation, which I love to hear. I will get that out. Also, just in case any of you have colleagues or people who are interested in this webinar, we post these on our website at the cidd.unc.edu, and it's under the Education tab. And so as soon as our great IT folks get it edited and put up there, it will be available for anybody to view. So, thank you so much, Holly. Appreciate it. I hope
Thanks, everyone.
a good evening.
Have a great evening.
So thank you. Wonderful job. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.